Syria has witnessed decades of war, countless tragedies, and a regime that seemed unshakable. But now, in an astonishing turn of events, Bashar al-Assad is gone. His regime has crumbled, and rebel forces have taken control. The question is no longer how Assad held on for so long. It's what happens next in a country torn apart by war and division. For years, Assad's regime was a symbol of survival against all odds. Backed by powerful allies like Russia and Iran, he weathered uprisings, sanctions, and even the rise of ISIS. But 2024 marked the end of his iron grip on Syria. How did the regime fall so suddenly? This isn't just a story of a dictator's downfall. It's about the power vacuum left behind, the alliances reshaping the Middle East, and the uncertain future of millions of Syrians. What happens next will not only determine Syria's fate, but could ripple across the entire region. To understand Syria's present, we need to revisit how Bashar al-Assad's rule began and how it unraveled. In 2000, Bashar al-Assad inherited power from his father, Hafez al-Assad, who had ruled Syria for 30 years. While Bashar promised modernization and reform, his regime quickly became synonymous with repression and control. The Assad family maintained power through a combination of patronage, fear, and a ruthless security apparatus. For over a decade, Bashar al-Assad appeared untouchable. But in 2011, the Arab Spring swept across the Middle East, sparking protests in Syria. Syrians demanded democracy, freedom, and dignity, values the Assad regime was built to suppress. The government's response was brutal, with security forces cracking down on demonstrators, plunging the country into a devastating civil war. The Syrian civil war turned the country into a battlefield, drawing in multiple players. Assad's forces bombarded cities, used chemical weapons, and committed widespread atrocities. Rebels fought for freedom but fractured into rival factions, including extremist groups. ISIS exploited the chaos, spreading terror across the region and prompting international intervention. By 2016, Assad's regime was losing ground. Yet thanks to Russian airstrikes, Iranian militias, and Hezbollah fighters, Assad regained control of key territories. His survival seemed assured, even as the country lay in ruins. Behind the facade of stability, cracks were forming. Years of war devastated Syria's economy. Inflation soared, the currency plummeted, and basic services like healthcare and electricity became luxuries. Russia and Iran, once Assad's strongest allies, began prioritizing their own interests, leaving him increasingly isolated. Syrians, exhausted by war and poverty, grew disillusioned with his rule. Even within his inner circle, loyalty began to waver. The final blow came when in late 2024, a coalition of rebel forces launched a coordinated offensive, capturing Aleppo, Homs, and finally Damascus. Within weeks, Assad fled to Russia, marking the end of an era. But why now? Why did Assad's regime, which survived so much, collapse so suddenly? The fall of Bashar al-Assad's regime wasn't a spontaneous event. It was the culmination of years of effort by a coalition of rebel groups, each with its own motivations, strategies, and visions for Syria's future. While they united against a common enemy, their differences are already creating new challenges. But who exactly are the rebels? The coalition that brought down Assad is as diverse as Syria itself, reflecting the complexity of the country's political and ethnic landscape. Here are the key players. Hayat Tahrir al-Sham, or HTS, once linked to extremist factions like al-Qaeda, has worked hard to rebrand itself as a political and military force. Today, it controls significant territory in northwestern Syria, particularly Idlib province. HTS's goal is clear: the establishment of an Islamist government in Syria. Its leadership has been pragmatic in recent years, engaging in diplomacy and presenting itself as a stabilizing force. However, its past ties to extremism continue to cast a shadow, making it a controversial player in Syria's future. The SDF is a Kurdish-led coalition that played a pivotal role in defeating ISIS. Backed by the United States, the SDF controls much of northeastern Syria, an area rich in oil and agricultural resources. The SDF's primary aim is autonomy for Kurdish regions, a goal that directly clashes with the ambitions of other rebel groups and neighboring Turkey. Despite these tensions, the SDF has positioned itself as a crucial partner for international actors seeking stability in Syria. Southern Front and Syrian National Army, supported by Turkey, brought additional firepower and strategic planning to the offensive against Assad. Turkey's involvement is driven by its desire to counter Kurdish influence near its borders and expand its geopolitical footprint in Syria. The SNA and Southern Front are more aligned with Turkey's vision for a post-Assad Syria, which includes a decentralized government that limits Kurdish autonomy. While these groups work together to topple Assad, their unity was born out of necessity rather than shared ideology. With Assad gone, their conflicting goals are already straining the coalition. HTS's Islamist vision for Syria is fundamentally at odds with the secular, autonomous aspirations of the SDF. This ideological divide is likely to become a flashpoint as both groups vie for influence. Turkey's support for the SNA and Southern Front complicates the situation further. Ankara's primary goal is to suppress Kurdish ambitions, which puts it at odds with the SDF and creates tension within the broader coalition. International actors like the United States, Turkey, and Qatar are deeply involved in shaping the post-Assad landscape. Their backing of different factions risks turning Syria into a proxy battleground, with competing interests undermining the prospects for unity. With Assad's regime dismantled, Syria faces a daunting power vacuum. Who will govern the country? How will resources, territory, and political power be divided? Establishing a unified government will be incredibly difficult. The rebel coalition represents a patchwork of ideologies, ethnicities, and external loyalties. Any attempt to form a central authority will require compromises that many factions may be unwilling to make. Without a strong central government, Syria risks becoming a haven for extremist groups. ISIS, though weakened, still has sleeper cells in the region, and other extremist factions could exploit the chaos to regain power. Over half of Syria's population remains displaced, either as refugees abroad or internally within the country. Providing food, shelter, and basic services to millions of Syrians will be a monumental task, requiring international aid and coordination among the rebel factions. Despite these challenges, the fall of Assad also presents opportunities. The new rebel leadership has an opportunity to engage with international actors to secure aid, investment, and diplomatic recognition. This could pave the way for rebuilding Syria's shattered infrastructure and economy. A decentralized political system could allow different regions to govern themselves, reducing tensions between factions. However, this approach would require careful negotiation and guarantees of minority rights. Syria's rich natural resources, including oil and agriculture, could provide a foundation for economic recovery if managed effectively. International partnerships and transparent governance will be key to unlocking this potential. The coalition's ability to navigate these challenges will determine Syria's future. Will the rebel groups rise above their differences to build a unified, inclusive government? Or will their rivalries plunge Syria into another cycle of conflict? That remains to be seen. Syria's future isn't just about Syria. The fall of Assad has sent shockwaves across the region and the world. For Russia, Assad's collapse is a major blow. Moscow invested heavily in propping up his regime, viewing Syria as a strategic foothold in the Middle East. Now, with Assad gone,
Russia's influence is waning. While Moscow retains military bases in Syria, it faces growing pressure to negotiate with the new rebel leadership.
Assad was a key part of Iran's axis of resistance. His fall weakens Tehran's regional strategy, forcing it to reconsider its alliances and priorities. Iran's investments in Syria, both financial and military, are now at risk, leaving it scrambling to maintain influence. Turkey sees an opportunity to expand its influence, particularly through its support of the Syrian National Army. Turkey's role in shaping Syria's future will be critical, but it risks clashing with Kurdish factions like the SDF. With Assad gone, regional powers like Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and Israel are recalibrating their strategies, eyeing opportunities to shape Syria's future. The fall of Assad is more than just the end of a regime. It's a moment of reckoning for Syria and the entire Middle East. This is a story of resilience, ambition, and the human cost of war. But it's also a reminder of what's possible when people demand change. The world is watching. What happens next in Syria will ripple far beyond its borders, shaping the future of global politics. What do you think? Can Syria overcome its challenges and rebuild, or is it destined for more turmoil? Let us know in the comments below. If you enjoyed this video, please like, share, and subscribe for more such content. And before you go, check out our video on Donald Trump's 2024 victory and its impact on global alliances. It's a fascinating dive into how leadership shapes geopolitics. You won't want to miss it.